letter carriers say they've been working for more than 500 days without a contract, and today they made their voices heard on the streets of
USPS failed to protect Eugene Gates and others.
Can't take it no more.
Mail carrier robbed at gunpoint.
Yes, are targeting these mail carriers for their universal keys.
Nearly 1,200 reported attacks and other assaults on postal workers just last year alone.
Next generation carriers and guests are individual union members speaking in a personal capacity and do not represent the views of the NALC, the United States Postal Service, or any other entity that has spoken on this program. All right, so welcome everybody on another episode of Next Generation Carriers. Today is March 5th. With us today, we have a few guests. There was a meeting recently. I know Capone and Paul were there. So if everyone wants to introduce themselves, I'll start since I'm already yapping. My name's Chris Persampieri. I'm in Branch 18, and I'm a 9-year letter carrier.
Hey, Paul Belanger, Branch 44, New Hampshire. I am a 39-year letter carrier.
James Capone, Branch 764, President, Dedham, Massachusetts, 18 years.
Yeah, Ernest Gonzalez, Alamo Branch 421, San Antonio, 10-year carrier.
All right, awesome. So, I got a phone call. Ernest and I are both at the Leadership Academy. The Beyond Formal A Academy. I keep getting that wrong. And I got a phone call 2 days ago from Capone. He had some exciting news about a meeting that went off. And Capone, if you want to fill us in on the details, go ahead. I'll let you talk.
So we had a WebEx meeting on Monday night. It was held in each region. Renfro came on it with our MBA officer, and they kind of discussed what's going on with the privatization. Also in regards to what's going on with the tentative agreement, arbitration, expedited arbitration, explain that whole process a little bit to us fully, and kind of where they're coming at and what they're going after.
Did they Paul, anything else you want to add to that meeting?
Yeah, well, we got some news today that the first actual date of the hearing is going to be March 17th. So that's kind of that's coming up. That's coming up quick. It's short notice for us to do things that we need to do, I think, between now and then. And
didn't that surprise you, Paul? Because he mentioned that during the meeting that we got a couple of dates scheduled. We're not tentatively signed on, but we expect to get dates in the next couple of weeks in March. And then I saw it posted on Facebook, March 17th.
Yeah, that was like the meeting was only 2 days ago, wasn't it? 2 nights ago?
Yeah, it's the Monday night. So 16th, I think, is what they said.
Yeah.
Just how fast they seem to have got it going. And it feels like they are wanting to get this done ASAP, because he mentioned a few times that there's a situation with the postal guys of, all right, we're leaving today. We're not sure if we'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah. I think my original 3-month estimate is probably right. We're probably going to see the arbitrator come back in about 3 months or so and probably have something for us.
My vice president mentioned me today, and it is insane in regards to back pay. So you say 3 months, it's going to be another 90 days to get the back pay to us. We're looking at what, 6 months from now? We're looking at September, end of summer, money. But he mentioned, why can't they do it faster? And
well, if
they don't want to.
If you look at the original tentative agreement, some of the aspects of the pay raises were not immediate either, and some of them were like 6 months after ratification or something like that, I think. So we might not even see that. It might not be 90 days. Some of it might not be back paid at all. Who knows?
Which is insane considering how long we've waited. Even when it's wrapped up, we're then going to be waiting longer, up to 3 months
for any other pay raises for most. Yeah, that's been brought up.
I think I was one of the first ones raising the flag about, the post office is keeping our interest on this shit. And that haven't changed. It's been like 3 years of interest. Can you imagine?
They do payroll weekly. Right. They have computers. Why couldn't they do the back pay checks a lot sooner? 3 months. Look, yeah, I know we got 260,000 letter carriers. We have computers. They're not doing it by hand.
But it's on computers. It's not like there's a guy has to run to the bank and then deposit a check, and then they have to take a pony and ride it across the desert.
Yeah.
And
it makes me think, the people are sitting there in Egan with those little old typewriters. Ching, ching.
Gladys, call me a line here. Operator, I need help. If anyone's done Venmo's pretty quick. It's not like this is a very complicated thing. And we're losing money on
it doesn't seem that difficult with computers. It doesn't seem like it takes that long to calculate. And the only thing I could think of, I told my vice president, was it's to get them to the next quarter. So that
Right.
way they can move the money around a little bit more and they're not in the middle of one quarter. They have the ability to show it in different quarters.
And
And,
again, the
and
longer it takes them, the more money that's in their pocket and not in ours.
yeah, they're getting the interest off it through the banks too that they
Yeah,
keep.
yeah.
Right.
And the amount of what? Shoot, back pay for all of us at that amount, probably at least $1 million it's costing them. They're making the interest on that.
Yeah,
That's a good chunk of change that's coming back into it.
Mm.
yeah,
Um,
sure.
wait, Ernest, I think it was you. I think you did an interview with Labor Notes, and you were mentioning how they were buying, like, weren't they buying bonds, or like, and they're not paying on them, or that's how they were not showing, like, they bought, like, no, they have something with bonds. I think it was you, right? Did you mention that?
So I ended up finding out that I was looking through our one of our financial statements. I think it was for fiscal year 2023, dude, if I'm not mistaken. Then, so fiscal year 2023, I ended up finding a line item that was labeled as investments, man, and it wasn't there in any of the financial reporting for the previous 2 years. And that financial that so the number was, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 10.9 billion. I don't have it in front of me and I haven't seen it in a while. So, anyone listening to this, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but that, so I figured maybe it's for the maybe it was for the vehicles and stuff. Because I remember, if you're gonna buy, I think we have what, 280,000 vehicles or something like. I mean, it's a ridiculous number, man. So,
Right.
if you're gonna buy, even at, I think I did the math, at like 40 grand a truck, it's still about $9 billion. It's a lot of money. So I was like, all right, maybe that's what the money was for. So I looked at the footnotes of the page where it explains that, and these were for U.S. Treasury bonds that were purchased for a year out. You know, and so I'm not sure if they were doing that specifically to pay for like retiree benefits, pensions, money for that year, or what they were doing. But it just seems like a lot of, because this was money that wasn't used to pay off a debt. Like our debts didn't go down, they went up. There was no other significant purchase that we made. And so it was literally just tying up, again, almost $11 billion for a
Yeah.
year for US Treasury bonds to be purchased for a year. So when I saw that, I was like, well, it seems awfully odd that right before we would get the financials for the right before we'd go into basically our tentative agreement argument, you know, and this was on Brian's, I went to the rap session in Houston when they came down, and so on there was
It was
our,
at -9 billion, I believe, right? When
well,
they
so
showed
it
the
it
United
actually,
States Post Office showed that year.
no, so this year was 6.5 billion, but that number actually didn't go to the 6.5, man. That number went towards the deficiency of the post office, which was like
Mhm.
60. They had the last 10 years up. I think like 10 years ago, we were deficient technically 65 billion. And by the time this rolled out, it was like 67 and a half, you know? So that, instead of it showing that, hey man, we've made a progress of, because if had you taken that out, it looked like we would have at least knocked away what, 8 billion off the number instead of adding two and a half more. So I don't know if that was part of it, but I remember it being in the slideshow for the executive council when they were doing their rounds for the TA rap session and stuff. And so I asked Brian that question, man. Unfortunately, I couldn't wait around to hear the answer because at the same time we were having a vote no Zoom for Build a Fighting NALC, which I was scheduled to speak on that. So I was trying to get to the front of the mic, ask this question, and then run off so that I could hop onto the Zoom and not miss. I ended up missing the Zoom anyway, because the lines were pretty long and there was a bunch of people in the rap session were asking this stuff. So but yeah, man, he gave an answer. I listened to it later. It was like two sentences long, and I don't know, man. I don't think a lot of people even looked at that because I hadn't been heard a real answer on it from anybody. Even the majority report commented on it when Tyler ended up going on with Sam Cedar and them. And so he was kind of the one that I guess brought it up to the point where people started talking about it on a more public level. Because at that point, I really only mentioned it to Labor Notes, which was later on, and mentioned it at that rep session. So I don't know. I don't know if maybe nobody looked at that. Nobody thought it was interesting. I mean, it stuck out to me when I was looking at those financials. But again, I could be wrong. I'm not a fucking CPA, especially at that level, dude. You're talking like you look at the financials, man. All the numbers are in thousands, but all the asterisks for these financial reports, you have to multiply them by millions. So if you see 1,033, it's actually $10.33 billion or 1.33 billion. So it's yeah, they're big numbers we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, because remember, we've had a pre-funding mandate for retiree health insurance since 2006 until 2022. So that's like, and I know they're funded up to 15 years. That should be showing up in our reports. Like we have, I mean, there must be at least, I don't know how much, 15 billion. Like we have billions of dollars sitting somewhere that we collectively the post office paid. Why is that not factored in? Why can't we could invest that and get a return? You could buy, we could do, we have to buy fucking Bitcoin or anything, but like we could. I feel like there's more money out there somewhere, like out there, and we're just it's
So,
not. I don't know.
From my understanding, it's kept separately, right, Paul? I believe I've always been told that the post office makes the payments, but we're not in control of that money. It's in some investment bank or it's in some bank account or held by some government agency. So we don't have that money anymore.
So we were basically taking the money and I hate to say this, but giving it to Congress to spend and owe us in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
There was something, and
Well,
Paul,
you
may remember this better. There was something about the government owes us some astronomical amount of money, and past presidents have promised to pay us back.
Yeah, there was a huge amount. It's a huge amount. It's like 150 billion or some stupid crazy amount.
And it goes back to the 80s, I think, right? Isn't that how it all started?
Yeah, it was
a calculation. Yeah.
It was some huge accounting error that they did. They shortchanged us like tons and tons and tons. So much money they can't even talk about paying it back. It's just gone. It's just like don't look at that. Don't look at that. These are not the droids you're looking for. That money's gone.
Yeah, man, and not to interject too much, but this is so again back to the post office, and this is money that this was our cash on hand money. This wasn't money that we took out of like a savings account or some other retirement account. This was the cash we had on hand, like that's prepared to use for either payroll or pay the light bills for X amount of post office, whatever the hell it is. It's just the cash on hand money that we have. And anyone who's paid attention to anything like this, they don't just do it to us. They do it to the Social Security Fund. Anyone who's paid attention to defense spending. I can't remember the last time that anyone's reported that the Pentagon passed an audit. Much less
they will never do that. Oh God, no.
Yeah,
all that
so
dirty
I mean,
money ends up. Oh,
yeah,
on.
so they do this with most government agencies that have a piggy bank. This isn't new, and we're not outliers.
I mean, this might not be a popular opinion, but I would love for somebody to come in and actually audit the post office and tell me if we're making money or losing money. I think they're full of shit. I really think they're full of shit.
Moving money around, and I found it funny. That first year we could have negotiated the contract. The post office showed a profit. It was a very small profit. I think it was maybe 1 billion. And they didn't have the argument of, hey, we're broke, because they showed profit that year. We didn't negotiate that. And then we got to the point where we were sending out the contract's done. They showed 9 billion negative that time.
Yeah.
Right.
So right when it's time for the contract, 9 billion negative. Then the next quarter, after they brought DeJoy out in front of Congress and ripped them apart, then they go, this quarter we made a profit. Look at that. The 10-year plan was working.
Yeah, so don't fire me. Don't tell me to resign, right?
Yeah. All right.
And honestly, man, I think more of that had to do with the results of that tentative agreement than it actually had to do with the because the whole point, to me, the whole point of that, like, think about everything that cost DeJoy, all the political fucking weight that it cost him to have to go up to Congress and say, we are fucking negative this year. We've lost $9 billion or $9.5 billion this year. Or 9 billion, whatever the number was. And it's funny that we're like throwing out numbers like, well, it's 9 or 9.5. That's $500 million we're talking about. We can't even get to that shit right now. But either way, so he did that with the hopes of, I'm sure, I don't want to make any accusations, man, but if that was the tactic that was used to hopefully get carriers on board to say, like, hey, man, we have to take this, otherwise we're looking at not having anything at all. So if you take that, you eat shit from Congress for it, and then the letter carriers still don't buy that shit and vote down your tentative agreement, you gain nothing for it other than making yourself look like you don't know how to run this business that you claim to have been in for the last 20 years with his logistics background. So, yeah, man, I mean, it cost him a lot. He didn't get shit for it, and he ultimately got removed by the same president that put him in power in the first place. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bit of in the ass.
And Ernest, you're right. The whole, I've decided to move on. I'm going to pass it on. So a month before that, he's fighting like hell. Sorry to use the term.
Oh
In
man,
front of
don't even get me
Congress
started with that.
about how well he's doing the 10-year plan and this is heading in the right direction. He's pompous, all this. And he sounded like a guy who was on a mission to get this done the way he wanted it, and it
Oh
was
yeah.
going to be his way.
Yep.
To a month later, going, hey guys, so I've done the best I can, and the 10-year plan is working, but I'm going to ride off into the sunset now, pass it on a new guy. This is my choice to do this. I mean,
It's
come on.
January 19th. It's the day before Trump shows up. I'm going to
Yeah,
pat myself
yeah,
on the back. It's just a
yeah.
coincidence of when I'm leaving. But anyway, good luck.
Happen to have
Uh,
a boot print on his ass on the way out. You know.
Yeah, and how much money did he make with having that job through his holdings and stuff like that too?
XPO. Oh, he still had financial interest in XPO. He was writing contracts to his old company. Like, you know, like there was how that went on, and like he got caught selling stock to one of the board of governors too. That they actually Renfro, I think, or Rolando was backing to stay on, and actually, I think Trump got rid of him, or Biden got rid of him. But like this whole incestuous relationship on the board of governors in DeJoy, that went on for a long time. They called him a threat to democracy, yet Biden didn't get rid of him during that 4 years either.
He
And
started supporting him in the board of governors.
Yeah.
yeah,
He went from the Republicans Republicans put him in, we hate him, to
yep,
we love him, and now the
right,
Republicans hate him. And it was back and forth, and that's the mail-in voting because this time around, the mail-in voting was lock key. It was this is going to be done correctly.
it was uneventful, really.
Yeah.
You didn't hear anything really this time around
Yeah.
either.
So
Yep,
where did it turn around that all of a sudden it's we love him, we hate him, we love him.
right,
No,
yeah,
the union's the same way. I mean, we fell in love with him when he was trying to, to do away with or get the postal was it the 6-day delivery,
6-day
universal
delivery.
delivery.
Yep,
Yeah.
And the pre-funding mandate. We loved him for that. We
yep,
needed him. We needed him.
yep.
And as much as we hate the new vehicles, most of us, I think, getting us new vehicles and getting that loan stuff that he worked out was really unbelievable to be able to get it done in
Right.
that situations. Now, say what we will about the new vehicles, it was at least a try to get vehicles. He didn't design them himself.
Yeah. Kind of going back to the original. About that telecom. You were there? Did Renfro mention anything about money or that? Like, because now it seems like I haven't heard it, but I know other people have that. He's trying to jam down these awful work rules that's universally hated, but he's trying to talk money. So, what did you hear? What did he say?
So my take was, I mean, I was going to try to keep a low profile, and I just couldn't keep my mouth shut because
No,
I mean, he
no kidding.
automatically started going for the work rules. He said that the work rules that were being approved had all gone through resolutions at the national convention, and it was what carriers wanted. And I'm like, well, hold on, carriers never asked to work 14 and 16 hours a day. That wasn't at the national
And I don't
convention.
remember who it was. It might have been Cariff or somebody from the CLC had mentioned none of these things have ever been in a resolution. We've gone through all the conventions, and there was never a resolution for these things that you brought up. Where did they come from?
But that's what he
And
said,
now he's
right? He
saying
said they
that
were
we
all
did it.
Yeah, he said they're all resolution based, and he said
Yeah.
based on that, he said that I forget the exact wording. He said something like most of them were going to be gone. Most of the ones that we agreed to with the Postal Service would go through with minimal changes. That's what it was.
Yeah,
It's,
and it
it's
seems like that's the plan is to go with the work rule agreements. Now, look, I think we all know carriers that want to work past 12 hours. There are guys that just want to do it.
Right.
Nothing
They
you do
shouldn't
will
be
stop
because
them. They
8
like
hours should be
it.
enough. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I've had guys where they hit the 60. I'm like, hey, it's 10 o'clock. You know, you can go home. They got to pay you for the rest of the day. You can go home and make the money. So it's not a money situation. No, I'm just going to stay.
Yeah.
And it's just,
but so not only based on safety, right? I mean, it's a safety issue for sure. But what about the fact that every time two people work 12 hours, that's 24 hours. That's 3 8-hour positions.
yeah.
So we're not hiring somebody that we could have a new brother and sister in our union.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one thing I think people are kind of missing on that whole the being able to give somebody the volunteer basis of working past 12 hours. For most stewards now, I understand what I'm talking about. When you go and argue Article 8.5D or 8.5G, you're always going to get an argument of, well, that carrier volunteered. It's like, well, they have an opportunity to volunteer at the beginning of the quarter. That's the point of the ODL situation.
Yeah.
Once you put that language in there, now you're going to start to have those same arguments with the 1260 violations, right? And it's like, and then to prove that is almost impossible because they make it so strenuous for a carrier to go fill out a 3996, which is why they almost never write carriers up for it. And
Yeah.
yet it's still the position that they argue the most when you go and argue those Article 8 violations. And then, now you're going to have that same situation with those 1260s, man. And then how does that leak into the grievances for the equitability? If you have a carrier at the end of the quarter who's behind by 16 hours or something like that, and it's like, well, actually, this carrier volunteered to work over 12 X amount of days this quarter, where this carrier opted to go home at 12. Now, all of a sudden, they can't have the right to be held equitable anymore because they're not willing to work past 12 hours a day. This is, there's nothing about this that benefits us as a carrier. And the argument that, well, this is so they guarantee that there's no discipline past 12. It's like, well, I mean, of all the other things you could guarantee no discipline for, that'd be the last thing on the chopping block because that's the easiest thing to defend right now.
And
But
Ernest, you're right. He had mentioned this. He said, "Look, it's ironclad. There's already language for it. You don't want to work after 12. You go home. There's nothing they can do for it. I can't see how they can violate this." And my thing was, we're reps. We deal with them violating every single bit of that contract, even the word "the." They find a way to violate everything. And from the way I always understood the 12 and 60, which I think people gotten wrong, or maybe it was explained to me wrong, is it's not for OTDL people. It's for forcing non-OTDL people. They can
that's
go home
another good
after.
point.
Yeah.
Another good
So
point.
I asked Brian.
equitability.
I asked Brian that question. I said, Brian, so you're saying that people can volunteer to go over 12 and 60? Well, you know that management is going to convince people to go against their wishes. They're going to tell a carrier, well, we need you to work 14 today. Do you really want Ernest to not be able to go home and pick up his kids after school? We need you to work 14 hours today. If you want that change of schedule next week, you're going to work 14 hours for me today. And Renfro's answer was, "Well, we got to educate people. We don't educate. We can't educate people into being brave carriers. We fight for the people who aren't brave enough to fight for themselves."
And then
So I
and
mean,
add that to the modern day economy right now, man, where you have this, the divorce rates amongst postal employees is probably higher than it's ever been in our history. And not just with them, but working class people in general, man. Most people are single parents, man, or they're in single households. If you look at the issues with Social Security payments, they're people with aging parents who now they have to worry about. And this is things that, I mean, fucking life do you expect to have as a single person? And if you have the obligations of the children or the aging parents or any other obligation, um, you're fucking never home at that point. Just keeping just keeping up with the hygienic stuff of maintaining a household starts to come into question. And that we're not even touching on anything else with the sleep deprivation or the shitty diets or anything like that. When all that other stuff that gets put in there when you're basically, and again, right now the one of the toughest things to do is to get carriers to fill out 3996 so that you can get them that over Article 8 money. If they're going to make it much easier for you to volunteer or basically kind of pin you in a corner, if you start to be that repetitive carrier who doesn't want to volunteer to go over 12, all of a sudden you're going to be the one that they're looking at your shoes. They have the right one. They're I mean, you just uniform shit. That knee brace that you're wearing is out of uniform. That's the kind of shit that these carriers are going to have to deal with just because they don't want to be worked like dogs.
yeah.
There's
And
nothing
that's
that
that's a good point, Ernest, because when you work a 16-hour day, you don't get 2 lunch breaks,
No,
no,
that's not
no.
addressed either. Like you don't
right?
get another 10-minute break after hour 15. Like I mean, that's it. If you
Well,
work
and
8
also,
hours or 16 hours, it's the same amount of breaks, 50 minutes. That's insane.
yeah, and I'd ask, what about emergency situation? We've all been there, and an emergency is an emergency, but what happens if they can't get the mail out and they got nobody? Is that how they're going to violate it? So, yeah, no, we made Chris work 16 hours, but man, it was an emergency situation. Just grieve it. Well, then what happens in that situation when they're just some manager doesn't understand it? And nope, I'm forcing you to.
And
You know,
James, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I asked Brian, "Are you saying that we can refuse a direct order?" He wouldn't answer that. He said,
and
"At
that's my
12 and
concern.
6, at 12 and
Huh.
60, you can go home, but can we refuse a direct order?" At 12 and 60, Brian, you're not answering the question. Can we refuse a direct order? He wouldn't answer it.
Mm.
So that's a no.
And
Yeah.
that's exactly it. There has to be emergency. contingency or something in there. They always put that stuff for the USPS to say, well, and even then, we have nothing to grieve it because it's
Yeah.
ungrievable. So how does that work in a situation where they force you, but we also agree that it's non-grievable?
I'll bet you a cup of coffee. Okay, if Brian really believes that that language allows the carrier to go home, then why don't you put it in our a new tentative agreement that carriers can refuse the direct order to go out after 12 and 60? Put that in there. He won't do it.
Yeah.
He won't
Or
do it.
or make a stipulation to the iron rule. In our JCAM, we have something known as an iron rule, which is basically management's ability to say, you will do as I say, even if you know for sure it's a violation, and even if I admit now telling you to do it, it's a violation. You will nevertheless carry out carry out the instruction and then grieve it later. I mean, all you have to do is add that language into that part of the JCAM or that part of the national agreement, and then you be able to say, okay, hey, man, the iron rule applies to everything except the 1260 violation or the
Yeah.
volunteer for 1260 member.
Yeah. I'll bet
they're
you
not gonna
both a
say.
cup of I bet you both a cup of coffee. That's not going to happen.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would bet I'd empty my bank and bet the fucking house that that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But
Another
then
thing.
the other one is
Oh,
the office time. That's something
That's
we
another
brought
one.
up during a convention.
mm,
Yeah, I don't see that being brought up in a convention. So that's something that what they brought to the table, I'm supposing, because what world would we bring to the table? We want to give off 13 minutes of office time for you guys.
So here's the ironic part, right? He makes the argument. He made it on your podcast. He's made it to me at a COP that it's not really a deduction in time because we're just moving times around. Well, we can do the math. 33 and 20 are not the same numbers. So it's a reduction in office time, but if it's not a benefit to the carriers and it's not a detriment to the carriers, just leave it out.
right.
Why are you still going to agree to it? So many people say they don't want to have it. If it's not a benefit to either party, why are you still doing it?
Right. Was there a resolution that we wanted a 20-minute office time at the convention?
No.
Did I miss that one? Like we want less office? That's going to cost us roots in the end. That will,
Well, so that's the
nationwide,
thing.
do the math,
Well, it's been years since I've been under inspection, but is he talking about moving this to the
That's-
office time that we get to reoccurring time? So it's
So
going to
that's
be
the-
moved to a column of reoccurring time in
Right.
that.
And
Well,
that's the
doesn't
key,
like
man.
I don't
the
have
key
the
right
numbers
there.
in front of me, but I think he's adding like 4 or 5 minutes to line 21 time. But that doesn't
Yes.
take away from all the time that he's reducing from everything else. So
Yeah.
I mean, so now they're going to be saying that you have 20 minutes of office time. It's going to be a guarantee,
And that point that you brought up there, Paul, man, that editing of the 1838C, I believe, is the document that we're talking about, man. That where you're taking off designated line items for certain procedures, saying we're not taking this away, we're just taking off those columns on the 1838 and putting it, saying that now this will all fall under item 21. I mean, how long before carriers forget that those even existed in the first place, and now all of a sudden, by definition, you remove these standard offers procedures that we're already accustomed to,
Yeah.
and saying that, oh, now it just falls under like item 21. Yeah, but that's and again, when you go through the route inspection process, you have a member of management come in and give you the instructions of how to fill this thing out. You honestly think that they're going to sit there and constantly remind us, oh, by the way, there's these other things that used to be on this form that now fall under item 21 that you just happen to have to know on your own in order to be able to document that time accordingly. And it's just it's
Yeah.
it's a fucking mess.
It feels like it gives them more ability to manipulate it
Exactly.
and falsify the numbers on it,
Yeah.
or move the numbers around, not in our favor. Why would you change an easier process and make it more difficult to slide over in different sections when you know they're going to do everything they can to trick us not to get it?
And if you think about it, James, I mean, we've been through formal inspection processes. The one thing they attack are line 21 items. You're filling out an OXIP on line 21. That's not going to work. You're looking at the bulletin board. You're replenishing your forms. You already did it once this week. You can't do it again. That's the one thing they attack are line 21s. And now they're going to go after it like crazy, like sharks in the water.
And now I know this was the one that said in any new postal and union route inspection system. So does that mean if they go and inspect Dedham, that's a new inspection? Or are they talking about a new joint process and these office time changers only matter towards a new joint process? But in that theory, does that mean they already have a joint process? They just haven't released it yet.
So it's only for a joint process, and it's a baseline, he said. So I have two problems with that. First of all, it's a baseline, so that's already starting us at 20. instead of 33. So you're already in the hole when you start out the gate. But secondly, you're right. On a regular 6-day route inspection, they're going to be looking at that number. They're going to say, hey, this accountable time should not be this, it should be this. Because in the J wrap or whatever 2025 wrap they're going to come out with, it's going to have that number. Accountable time is no longer 4 minutes; it's 3 minutes or whatever it is, 2 minutes, and they're going to say that's what we expect from you. Yeah, just like you guys said. I mean, it's the daily work on the workroom floor too. The stress that this is going to bring to letter carriers. He's not taking that into consideration.
Well, bosses already use it. It's already been said. Well, now you have 50 minutes. You union agreed. I remember the first time I heard that hour thing. I come in, my post office is postmaster's trying to tell people that an hour, help me out, get out an hour. And I said, look, we got 33 minutes fixed. You got to sweep the mail. And he goes, oh no, your union agreed to this though. My union didn't agree to shit. First off, there was a memo, but we didn't agree to shit. It's not in a contract anywhere. It doesn't mean anything, but they harped it. And in other stations where maybe you don't have a rep saying nothing that much, or an even worse postmaster, they're harassing you based on that. And now they're starting to go, well, yeah, look, 50 minutes. 50 minutes. Keep me off the radar, guys. 50 minutes. I know it was an hour, but honestly, they want 45. I talked them into 50. The number is 50. That's based on us saying we gave up stuff. And they're going to keep hounding on that more and more. Oh, well, we said 50 last week. 40 this week because your union agreed to it because you lost 13 minutes.
So have you guys seen what Pooms will do when they have these teleconferences? They'll have like 1 hour office play. They always put play at the end of it. A Friday play, Monday Madness play when they're going after Monday Times. It's going to be a 47-minute play or 50-minute play. They're going to make a big freaking joke out of it and squeeze us. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but the suicide rate for letter carrier or the postal employees is way up in 2024. I don't remember what the number is, but it's skyrocketed just in 1 year.
I know exactly which article you're referencing to, and I can't remember exactly what the official numbers were, but I do remember the multiplication was like 4 times the national average or 4 times what it was in the past. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was a significant jump, man. Significant jump.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, people are working harder than they've ever worked in their life, and they're getting a smaller and smaller paycheck every time. And it's just killing the stress of working. I mean, you think people like working 12, 13 hours a day, having nothing? I mean, at least if you work that much, wow, I have a jet ski for it. No, this is for groceries. You're only covering the basics of a letter carrier wage. I'm 9 years here, 3.5 I lost a CCA time, so I didn't go up any steps at that time. So I'm only at what, mid 20s an hour, I think. I'm 26, and I have to work overtime, and it sucks. You're exhausted all the time, and Jesus God.
Chris, this is a true story. When I first got a job at the Postal Service in 1985, I just said that 1985.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I know.
Thank you for making me feel young. Oh God!
Listen, when I got that job, I went straight to a car dealership and I bought a Sunbird GT Turbo convertible. It was one of the best cars out there. I was like, I'm treating myself because this is a great job. Great job. If you get a job at the post office now, what are you going to buy?
No, ramen, and you can sell platelets when you're done too. So
no shit, right? I mean, with what Ernest was saying, people are working 16 hours to make ends meet, and they don't have a life. You should be working 8 hours and making that amount of money, so you actually have a life.
Right.
And it's a sad state, the amount of carriers in my office that are in their 30s that live at home because they can't afford rent. Right. And like Paul said, I grew up in Boston. My first paycheck, I ended up getting my own apartment in Hyde Park. It was great. A 2-bedroom apartment. Felt like it was the greatest thing in the world. One of my first friends in group to be able to get his own apartment because of this job. Then to hear that 30-year-olds aren't able to do it that have been here for multiple years, how far have we fallen behind?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Are they going to get us to that? Originally the TA showed 11% for the top step, which would bring us to, I believe the math said 44 to 46. Basically, it was supposed to be 80% of what UPS is going to make November 2026 when they're at 48 an hour.
I don't think that's even math remotely correct. But another question: Did he bring up table 1, table 2 talk at all? Because that's a big thing. That now he's been talking, but I haven't heard him mention it in a while.
I don't
He
think
had said that the plan was to move table 2 to table 1, that was what they were negotiating at.
right, and that's bullshit.
I mean, it's I could ask for a Ferrari too. Like I
Yeah.
don't think I'm gonna.
Yeah.
It just seems he wanted now. If I've heard it, full colas, table 2 to table 1, elimination of CCAs, and upgrading malt. Those three things have a big price tag attached to them. I don't think if he said, because he said they were only going to give up $2 billion, and we want I don't, and also what a 3, 3, and 3 for each year, correct? Which would be a 9% raise throughout the life of the contract. I don't think he's going to get that. He's not. I mean, what pressure does management feel right now to do anything for us?
Well, and you got to remember.
And last place probably.
You got to remember too, Chris. I mean, if he comes in at 3.33, like hypothetically, 9% over the term of a 3-year contract, that's top offer. That's not what he's going to come away with. I mean, the post office is going to laugh at that and offer 1, and then we're going to offer 2, and they're going to offer 1.3, and we might get 1.5. Yeah, I know. And if you think about it, 1.5, we already know the colas aren't going to match up to what the predictions were.
Right.
So
we're already using projected
and
colas,
we
which is stupid.
The 2 steps. The whole dropping the 2 steps and the 1,000 towards the top step aren't going to happen now.
Right. That's gone too.
So our top step isn't going to be getting where it needs to be, and the bottom step would be moving to table 2. I haven't done the math, but that might not be as big of an increase as they were getting in the original tentative agreement.
Yeah.
So are we moving backwards each time?
I feel like we are. I think we are. And you know what? I've said this, and I know it's going to happen. Whatever we end up with, Brian's going to say, but we didn't go private. I had to fight that battle for you, and we won that battle.
I think he's finding his out. I'm just saying that. I look. Is privatization a threat? Yes. How much of a threat is a debate? I would say it's low. Are there, legally speaking, he can appoint up to 4 people to the board of governors and a new postmaster general. Legally, that would give him powers, but he can't wholesale absorb us into the government. There are, like I said, there are things he can do to make it difficult. Yes. But I think he's just going to say what Paul said. Oh, well, we still have collective bargaining rights. So, what do you want from me? Good enough, because we exist and fight like hell. Hashtag fight like hell. That's his thing, and he thinks he's going to get reelected on that thing because he knows. I know he said to us that he wasn't thinking about 2026, but he's 100% thinking about 2026 in his reelection. Yep. All right. So I know we want to do a quick episode because Ernest and I have to write our Class B contingents. Is there anything else you guys wanted to cover at all?
I gotta tell you one thing. I gotta throw you guys a little plug here. Ooh. So we have a new SDC in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I had a carrier come up to me, a fairly new carrier, who said, "I've been watching the Next Generation Carrier podcast, and I'd like to be a steward."
Wow! Hey, look at that! I'll take that.
Yep. So that's shout out to Kayla. We're gonna get you trained.
Hey,
all right,
Kayla.
good luck.
All right, welcome to the movement. All right. If she wants to come on for a few minutes and say hi, let her. Yeah, she can come on. She can talk about it. That'd be great. That's a success. We have a success story with the.
Yeah, I love that. So. Yeah.
All right, awesome.
So one thing he did mention that kind of got me was in regards to if there's interference from the administration or any situation we had to go to the labor board. As of right now, we can't go to the labor board because the labor board does not have the quorum to hold session, which means any issues we have would have to go straight to federal court. And it's insane to me that our protection of the labor board is technically still there, but it is gone. And that's something I think people really need to pay attention to because not having the labor board is death for unions. That's a huge lifeline for us.
So I've got a question about that though, because we just had a labor charge filed, and I just spoke to a labor rep yesterday, and we ended up dismissing the charge, but they're still active, they're still doing things. I don't know if it's.
I wonder how high up it would have to go to get that's the thing. I don't know. Like I said, that's a good. Not every rep's gone yet anyway, but that's a good point.
But do they not have enough to make rulings? Maybe.
Right.
Maybe. They can help the process along, but they can't actually make a ruling because they need X amount to make a ruling.
Right. Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Okay. So thank you all. Let me just plug this because John's gonna stab me if I don't say this, but you can come on. Please follow us on Spotify, iTunes. We're also on YouTube. If you can like and subscribe and give a 5-star review, tell any future letter carrier who wants to become a steward someday to listen to us. We'll give you an inspiring story to hop on. But so thank you all for coming on tonight. I know this could be a short one, but all right. Also, we
And
have
donate to the Letter Carrier Political Fund. Donate to the Letter Carrier Political Fund. We need
please
it.
do. Yes, I know we need a voice in the government to do stuff. Also, on the 25th, we are having the great Corey Walton will be coming on, I think, Wednesday, March 25th. So register for that too. Yeah, and Paul and Ernest, thank you for being here. And all right.
The rally's the 23rd.
Rally, March 23rd as well. Sunday in Boston. Yep.
Yeah, man,
Ernest,
if I
are you
could.
plugging?
Yeah, man, I might as well go ahead and plug, man. So, Build a Fighting NALC that I'm a part of there. We have our National Day of Action, basically, where most people around the country who are following that thing are going to have rallies on the day that Capone just said. And in most branches, again, even if you don't have wide support amongst, your rank and filers who were basically the outsiders before, where your national is basically kind of getting in line with and just kind of telling the MBAs if you can, all you guys can reach out to your national business agent and ask for flyers and stuff. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the Fight Like Hell campaign, but again, if you're someone who's strapped on resources, having some kind of materials and some kind of support is better than not having anything at all. So yeah,
And
man.
they've been
So
great with it. I will say that, with especially at least in my region, they have been involved. They've gotten stuff. They've worked through it. It seems like the NELC is really finally working with these rallies and getting on board with it and putting some weight behind it. So take advantage of it while we got it.
yeah, man.
Yeah,
So
we're
for
no.
all Texas carriers, man, I know my brother Badmouth Morris is organizing something up there. He spoke to our MBA. They're going to be sending him some material for the Dallas Fort Worth area. I was supposed to originally be for Fort Worth, but I think the whole Dallas Fort Worth area is trying to do something together. We're also having one down in San Antonio. So anyone in the surrounding South Texas area or Northern Texas area who wants to make it out to one of those two events, feel free to help us out. But yeah, Build a Fighting NALC, Facebook, Instagram, fightingnalc.com. Look out for the petitions that we've been putting out. And yeah, man, hopefully you guys get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And also one thing too, because there's a lot of great people that if there's only like 2 or 3 of you who want to do a rally, organize one. That's how we started. Like that's how BFN was just a bunch of us talking together and like, let's put on a rally. And like the first meeting we had, it was just 3 of us, Capone, myself, and Ryan. It was just the 3 of us. And I'm like, maybe we keep it going. If you can organize it, do it. Even a small, tiny one. Not eventually, courage is contagious. People will start coming to these things. Just be always, keep putting that message out and people will come to you. I promise it happens. But